Welcome everybody to Crystal Kyle and Friends. Today we're going to be talking to Jackson Franklin, who's running against Congresswoman.
They actually do that. Republicans do that because they don't like to, they feel like Congresswoman is woke.
Really?
So some of them will call themselves Congresswoman.
But that's hilarious because in this case, it's actually a woman. So they're misgendering them, which is another thing they say they're against.
But they're into misgendering people. So
but
apparently even themselves.
Saying that this woman is a man is they're making her trans. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Representative Sparts.
Representative Sparts. Okay. Which, by the way, Sparts is a very unfortunate name. It kind of sounds like Sharts.
I knew that's where you went with it.
It just doesn't it don't work, man. It don't work.
That hadn't really occurred to me, but I see where you're going.
Now
with
every
that.
time you hear Sparts, you're gonna think Sharts.
But you guys may know her because she had a town hall that went disastrously poorly for her. Of course,
yes.
I guess to her credit, she actually did a town hall, which most of the Republicans are terrified at this point and have decided we're just not going to do town halls. Tons of people flooded in, very unhappy about everything the Trump administration is doing, and Elon and Doge, whatever. It's very adversarial. And she said this ridiculous thing at one point, trying to defend their illegal deportations with no due process. She said
criminals don't get due process, or if you break the law, you don't get due process.
Yeah.
Which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
The whole point of due process is to ascertain whether or not someone did in fact break the law. So anyway, Kyle found the guy who was running against her and was like, hey, let's check him out.
Democratic challenger to Representative Sharts, Jackson Franklin. And shout out to Jackson. Love that he's running. Got a great platform. So we're going to talk to him.
He's got some good lefty values, it looks like, in the platform.
He does, yeah. And then we're also going to talk to Kat Abu-Ghazaleh, who used to work for Media Matters. Now she's running for Congress in Illinois. And she's been making some waves because she said, look, I'm going to post everything I'm doing online. I'm going to talk to you guys every night about what it's like running for Congress, and I'm going to be aggressive and get my message out there. And she's younger, and so this is part of that, the new wave of, you see a lot of millennials now being like, all right, we're done with the gerontocracy. Get the fuck out of here, you boomers.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's over. It's done. We had 2 Democrats die in office within the past, month.
Yeah.
And then you know what the Republicans did, right?
Yeah, they decided we're just not going to do that election for a while.
Yeah,
so
they were we'll do that election a year from now or something so that it gives Mike Johnson more wiggle room.
Yeah.
So there are actual consequences to this shit.
Of course. Yeah, so she's running, just to be clear, she's running in a Democratic primary against a sitting member of Congress, a woman named Jan Schakowsky.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm excited to talk to her, what made her jump in the race, why this particular district and this congressperson and what her platform is, what she would do differently, et cetera.
And she's been sued by Elon Musk. So there's a lot to talk to Kat about.
Yeah, she's half Palestinian ancestry?
I believe so, yeah.
And so she's, anyway, regardless of her ancestry, she's good on Israel-Palestine as well, which will be exciting. And there's new polling that's come out about how just the entire country is turned on Israel.
I know,
the only
majority
demographic group that is still net pro-Israel are
low IQ.
Boomer Republicans.
Low IQ.
Synonymous.
I repeat myself.
Some may say. Synonymous, some may say. But yeah, even young Republicans have now, in some respect, turned on Israel and changed their viewpoint. So
that one's a little sticky though, because it's why are you guys
anti? I know, yeah.
It's not the same as us being anti-Israel, you know what I'm saying?
But anyway, Israel has destroyed their image in this country.
Yes, that's true. All right, so before we get to that, and by the way, everybody, do yourself a favor, sign up on Substack below so you can go see the full interviews. You're only going to get some teaser clips on the channel up front. You can sign up for free and listen to the full audio podcast when it drops, or you could sign up for $5 a month to get the full video. So definitely check that out. The link for Substack is below. But before we get to that, we got a lot of other stuff to talk about. So, Crystal, tariff madness. It's driving me fucking crazy. I'll do all this prep, record a show, and then by the time I get off air, oh look, they switched the fucking tariff policy, and it's motherfucker.
I know.
You know.
I actually suggested, I was pushing for us to maybe do Breaking Points live this morning because it's just sick of doing shows that are immediately
obsolete.
Dated. Yeah.
Obsolete. Now, to be fair, I even said in my segment, even if he changes this, I don't think the long-run outcome is any different because we've blown our credibility with the world. Everybody's trying to get off the dollar. So I did say that in the original segment, but he did change the tariff numbers. And so the conversation we're going to have is, why did he change the tariff numbers? So let's get to, I want to show you this interview. This is Fox Business reporter Charles Gasparino. This guy is really, really, really tied in with Wall Street. He's one of those guys. And so he gives us his reporting as to why Trump lowered the rates on most of the countries and then made the rates higher on China. Take a look.
Well, I mean, because of the mixed messaging, how can you doubt them? I mean, let's be clear what happened. Who capitulated here and why? And You know, I don't want to say this because I'm a patriot. I'm an American. But it is the White House who capitulated based on everything I hear and all my sources. And the reason why is because of the bond market and what happened last night. You know, Bessent knows this better than anybody. When you have yields on the 10-year rising to 5%, stuff starts shutting down when you have the lending markets screwed up. By the way, who was dumping the bonds? Somebody asked them if it was China, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't. It was Japan. While he was negotiating with Japan, according to my sources, who are running major money management firms that are involved in the bond market, without giving up names, Japan was dumping bonds because they believed this was not a great place to do business. That forced their hands. Now, what you can say, I think, legitimately here, is Trump decided to take the win. And here's why. There was overwhelmingly, deal potential here among the entire world, except for maybe China, right? Everybody really wanted something. So he did take the win, but make no mistake about it. Peter Navarro was talking as of yesterday about not taking the win, and now they did. And it's all because of the bond market.
So what he's talking about there with the bond market, Crystal, is that the stock market went down, mm-hmm. and usually when that happens, the dollar gets stronger because people flee to safety, which the dollar is viewed as safe. But in this instance, the stock market went down and the dollar went down also.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. And with regards specifically to the Treasury market, not only did it move in the opposite direction that they thought. So like you said, normally there's what they call flight to safety. And that's usually Treasury bonds are seen as like, the safest, most stable, we're the global superpower.
Which is
blah,
U.S.
blah, blah.
government debt.
Yes, U.S. government debt.
That's right, buying U.S. government debt.
And so rather than that happening, people in Japan and actually I think around the world were dumping Treasury bonds. And some of that, I think, is part of a broader realization of like, we got to stop being reliant on these people because this is crazy, right? Moving away from the dollar, moving away from Treasury bonds, and those things are sort of inherently linked. Some of it was just hedge funders and others were getting hammered so hard that they just had to sell everything that they had, even if they wanted to hold on to treasuries, just like we got to liquidate because we got to make margin calls or whatever. So some of it was, I think, that going on. But Trump has all but admitted, like his sycophants are out there, art of the deal, this was brilliant, this was the master plan all around.
Tariffs are
Trump
great, art of the deal.
Came out and basically all but admitted, yeah, it was the bond market, and also said something like they were getting yippy and people were getting afraid. So I guess he joined the panicans, right?
He's a
panicant now. And you can understand, like, Trump is a real estate guy, and that Treasury rate is directly tied to what your mortgage rate is going to be, what any sort of lending rate from the bank is going to be.
So
Trump
that number was going up.
And that number was going up
massively.
because when when the market is, when more people are selling Treasury bonds and they're going down, then you're having to offer a higher interest rate in order to get buyers. So that's why the rate goes up when, people are selling more Treasury bonds. So he realizes debt is getting more expensive. That means for him, in his real estate developer mind, he has used massive amounts of debt. He always talks about how much debt and
king of debt. I'm the king of debt.
Exactly. And so that means your projects are getting wildly more expensive. In addition, one of the 8D chess justifications for all of this was, Trump's going to intentionally crash the market. That's going to bring the Treasury rates, the bond rates down, and that's going to allow us to refinance America's debt, U.S. debt, at a lower rate, and we'll have to pay less in interest, and it'll help our debt, it'll help our fiscal situation.
And the opposite happened.
The opposite was happening. So, yeah, he looked at that and was like, holy hell. There was some quote where he was like, well, I was okay with a recession, but I'm worried about a depression. And that's what was truly being courted. But as you point out, I think it's important to realize there was a huge stock market bump. Everyone's, he walked away and he can be reasoned with and he's not the total madman, et cetera. Now we're talking on Thursday, the markets are back down again.
Of course!
Because people are realizing, but wait, we still have 10% tariffs on everyone, 25%, by the way, in Canada and Mexico on any goods outside of the specific trade deal there. And on China, is it 125? Is it 150? It's not even totally clear, but massive, massive tariffs on our number one trading partner on whom we rely on for kind of everything. So we talked on Breaking Points today to a guy who runs basically a platform to manage like ports, so people who are shipping stuff can like manage their port situation. And he was like, if they keep the China tariffs in place, you're talking about his quote, mass bankruptcies. So we're still in a very bad situation.
Let me just say, I called the flight from the dollar, and I was losing my mind that nobody else was talking about it. Because here you have a country, here you have a government that is so chaotic and so unstable and changes their mind on a day-to-day basis and completely disregards treaties and rips them up whenever the hell they want to, and are threatening to invade some of our allies and are doing a tariff war against our other allies. And so what that means, guys, is the rest of the world is their hand is forced to make new alliances and work around the United States because they know these guys aren't good for their word and they're not stable. And if you have a treaty with them, it could be ripped up the next day. It all depends on the next fucking Truth Social post that Trump does. And so what people are realizing is the dollar is actually not safe.
Yeah.
And it's not long for this world as the world reserve currency anymore. The dollar is not going to be the global reserve currency anymore, which of course means an economic catastrophe in the United States. Other countries will deal with a lot of pain too. But this is real Armageddon type scenario that we're talking about here. And it drove me crazy that nobody was talking about it because I think everybody acts on this assumption like Trump does, that we are the indispensable nation and us being the world superpower is almost like in Trump's mind, I think it's like a natural hierarchy and we were always supposed to be at the top. And since that hierarchy is natural, it by definition can't change. So everybody has to work with us. But that's part of his stupid like eugenics thinking. He's like, it's all about the genes, we're winners. And it's like, you fucking idiot, that's not how the world works. And they're gonna dump us so fucking fast because of your insanity. Now, why do you think he did it just because he was scared of the bond market? Or the other thing is, and a lot of people are talking about this, there's quite a bit of evidence of massive insider trading. So he comes out and says, good time to buy in the morning. And then soon thereafter, right before, a couple minutes before he makes the announcement, boom, you see there's a bunch of people placing bets.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people got really fucking wealthy over this. And then even the hosts on CNBC are coming out and saying,
yeah,
are you guys manipulating the market? Are you guys insider trading? Are you guys shorting the market? Are you guys making money off this? And I think the answer to that is abso-fucking-lutely, I think that's happening.
So not just anybody on CNBC, Andrew Ross Sorkin, who was like, you know, the guy over there and deeply tied in both in the journalist world and in the financial Wall Street world. And even before Trump makes this announcement and first tells everybody now's a great time to buy and then, you know, switches up the tariff regime, whatever. Even before that, Andrew Ross Sorkin was like, so are they insider trading? Is that like basically what's going on here? Because think about it in this context. You know, we've all talked about how much Congress can benefit from the knowledge they have of what bills are coming down the pike and what the specific provisions are and which companies stand to benefit. That is so much more indirect from the President of the United States literally turning upside the entire global economy.
All the time.
With a tweet. Anyone who knows what he's going to say at 1 p.m. or whatever and totally switch everything up, they're in position to make billions of dollars. And so what was really noteworthy about those bets that were placed, and this was tracked by a few different people online. So these were bets basically that that these different exchanges, the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, that they would go up on that day, right? That's what these bets were. Many of them were placed. There was a huge spike before Trump even tweeted the thing about now's a great time to buy. Before that.
So they were whispering it to each other.
That's the theory. And I mean, seems pretty plausible. Then there was another spike, similar type bets before the actual announcement. Trump himself was in the White House with Charles Schwab, billionaire, and said, this guy over here, he made $2-point-something billion today. Oh, really? How?
Yeah. Why don't you enlighten us on that by your crimes?
What he was able to glean from being at the White House on this day that enabled him to make I can't remember the number, 2.9 or something billion dollars in a single day.
He's not just saying that the market went up enough to give him $2 billion more dollars?
That's what he said. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, the evidence is already there.
This guy, Charles Schwab, made $2 billion today.
The evidence is already there for insider trading. But to your point, guys, this is not over. I mean, the MAGA idiots on Twitter who are like trying to dunk on liberals and lefties right now because, look, line went up today. It's like, do you understand? Somebody shared a chart that was like, it's the 8th biggest bump in the stock market in a single day.
Right.
And then you read the dates, and it's like 2008, 1930, 1931, fucking 2020 with the COVID crash.
Yeah.
It's like, you do realize what was happening around these events, right? These were market collapses, and you would have brief days where people thought, oh, we've hit the bottom of the dip, so buy.
There'd be some euphoria, and then it'd go right back down.
And then it would go. And guys, I can't stress this enough. 125% tariffs on China alone is apocalyptic.
Yeah.
It is apocalyptic. Never mind the 10% tariffs on the rest of the world, which everybody seems to think right now are lenient. That is still worse than if we just did reciprocal tariffs. There's so many. Switzerland has 0% on us. We slapped, what was it, at least 10% on them. Other countries have 1%, 2%, 3%. We're slapping them with 10% tariffs. This is still worse than what people thought before liquidation day was the worst case scenario.
That's right. That's
and
exactly
so the market euphoria is going to fucking go away. And this is nowhere near done yet. And also, it's kind of humiliating and embarrassing. Just like, if you're, like, they have to be laughing at Trump in some of these places, in China, in Japan, in all these places. They're looking at him like, what the fuck is wrong with this? And everybody made it seem like it was the art of the deal. They had no deals.
Right.
They had no meetings.
They made zero
They had
deals.
no conversations.
Yeah.
He just went, all right, now China retaliated, so we're going to make it 125 on them. But nobody else retaliated, 10% on them. Meanwhile, that wasn't even true. The EU earlier in the day had announced, we're doing reciprocal tariffs on you, 10 to 25%.
Yeah.
And he pretended like they didn't.
Like that didn't happen.
And somebody floated a theory, and they were like, maybe advisors went up to him, and they were like trying to trick him, and they were like, sir, you did a great job. Everybody back down. The only one that didn't is China, but everybody back down, so now you can lower the tariffs. And then, like, if somebody brought up to Trump about the EU thing to his face, and he was like, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't hear about that. So he might have actually not known about it because his advisors have to treat him like the Mad King, because he's the Mad King.
And a toddler.
And a toddler.
Yeah, they
And a
treat him
toddler.
like, oh, you're great job, buddy.
Yeah,
Way to
Barrasso
go.
was doing that,
Way
the
to
Wyoming
go.
senator.
Yeah,
Like, the markets
totally.
are seeing your brilliance, sir. And he was like,
Totally.
nobody's ever seen anything like it, have they?
The thing that is so shameless to me is the people who, like Benny Johnson and Boccia, who were out there, like, first of all, Benny was doing the whole, like, what is money anyway? You lose, he said something like, you lose nothing if you lose money.
Except money.
Except money.
As Jon Stewart said, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's just digital ones and zeros. Like, you don't want an iPad. You don't need an iPad. You just want an iPad.
That was the
like,
quarter
you don't
who said
need
that,
all
yeah.
this stuff. And Boccia's in there, like, saying this is the glorious thing that's ever been done for the working class, and finally putting Main Street over Wall Street.
Oh
That was
my
what Scott
God.
Besson said. And it just going all in on the previous tariff regime. How you know that this is all total and complete bullshit is not one of them
Said, why are you changing the tariff
said,
numbers?
oh, I loved the previous tariff
Yeah.
regime. What are you doing?
They're
Why
hacks.
are you
They're all
back? Don't
hacks.
back down.
Grifters.
This was amazing. This was going to be glorious for our reindustrialization and to stop getting screwed by Lesotho or whatever. Like, not one was like, oh, I actually liked the previous thing. Why did you change it?
Why did you change that? Yeah,
All
they're
of them were
grifters. They're
instantly
hacks.
switched from, this is going to be great and bring jobs to art of the deal. Just like
Yep,
the meme.
just like that.
Literally just like
I
the
know.
meme. They're so shameless.
They're
It is
shameless.
incredible.
They're
And if he
shameless.
changes again today, they'll justify that.
Totally.
And if in 90 days from now he puts back in place this regime, they'll justify that. Like, they don't care.
100%.
It is,
You're 100% right.
If he announces tomorrow we're going to 0% trade around the world, 0%
Art of the deal.
tariffs around the world, art of the deal.
That's
Isn't
right.
this amazing? Trade is going to flow. It's going to be great for the stock market. Look at these gains, etc. It's incredible.
And
incredible
I love
to me.
it's permanent. These tariffs are permanent, but also they're a negotiation.
Of course.
That's a contradiction. And then Trump tries to have it both ways. No, it's both permanent and they're negotiable.
And they can be
That's not a
negotiable.
thing. That's not a thing. All right,
Maybe it is
we
a
got to
thing.
move
I
on to
don't
our
know.
next story.
Okay, all right. What else we got?
So Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of, what is it again?
Michigan.
Michigan? I was going to say Wisconsin. I don't know why I thought Wisconsin.
Wisconsin is Tony Evers.
Tony
I
Evers. I actually like
yeah.
Tony Evers. He did some base things around the education budget there.
Yeah.
He used a line item veto to just fund the schools for
That's
the next
right.
1,000 years
yeah,
or something.
he did. He snuck in a line
Mega
that was
based.
like, yeah, that's
Mega
right. I
based.
forgot
I
about
like
that.
Tony Evers. Horrible public speaker, but I love him. All right, so Gretchen Whitmer, guys, this is crazy. This is so crazy. She decided, I'm gonna go to the White House. Which is like, are you looking around at what's happening? Rome is burning, you dumb bitch. What are you doing? They're so crazy. You got this guy is like deporting innocent people to a slave labor camp and fucking tanking the global economy and threatening Greenland with war and meeting with Netanyahu and jacking him off in front of the world. And you're like, I got a good idea. Bipartisanship. Let's do bipartisanship right now.
That is the like peak Democrat brain right there.
It really is. And literally the meeting was for, ready for this? I saw this earlier today. Bipartisanship to try to improve the economy. That was the meeting.
Now's the moment for that. Yeah.
I got an idea. You meet with Trump. Sir, please stop destroying the economy at the moment. Like, that's how you bipartisanly fix it.
Yeah.
Tell him, just stop everything you're doing, please. Everything.
Have you looked at the bond markets? Maybe that's what she was there to say.
So I have to show you this picture. Guys, throw that picture up because the cameras were in the White House talking to Trump. And Gretchen Whitmer was in the room. And I kid you not, she was fucking hiding from the cameras in a corner of the room. And then Trump goes, we're here with Gretchen Whitmer today.
No.
She's doing amazing work. She's doing great work. We like what she's doing. And she's hiding. And they're panning the camera, desperately looking for her because she's literally hiding. And then it finally gets on her and she's got this face on. And look,
God.
the conversation I have here is obvious, right? There was a brief window right after Trump won the election for like a week maybe, where the dominant sentiment, not just among Democratic politicians, but honestly even among Democratic voters for that moment was like, it is what it is. Not only did he win, he also won the popular vote. I guess you got to work with him. I guess you got to try to find your wins where you can get them. I guess we got to go back to the old school decorum and civility. Like, hey, it is what it is. They have enough of a mandate. You got to work with them, right? That was the mindset, and the poll showed that. Within like a week or two at the most, those polls went because he started doing everything he does. And everybody on the Democratic voter side was like, oh, no. Not only do I want you to resist, I want you to resist even harder than 2017.
Right.
I want you to resist harder than you've ever resisted ever. And you see this with people like Gavin Newsom, who's doing a podcast and sucking off Steve Bannon and playing footsies with Charlie Kirk and all these people. And Gretchen Whitmer doing this. It's like, are you really this stuck in 1992?
Right.
Are you really this stuck in 1992? Like, she destroyed her 2028 chances with just this.
I agree.
With just this.
I agree. And rightly so.
Yeah.
Because you clearly don't understand what's going on in the country. You don't understand the threat that this man not only poses, but like what he's already done. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't she there in the Oval Office while he's signing these executive orders to direct the DOJ to go after people who were critics of it?
We're actually going to talk about that in a minute. Yeah.
But she was there for that.
I think she was. Yeah.
And so, like, you're standing there watching this happen and Trump talk about how the election's rigged and whatever, and you're just letting yourself be used as a prop in that moment.
Insane, bro.
It's utterly insane. Utterly insane. And so, yeah, I think this will be the central litmus test in 2028. Is like when it was uncomfortable and when you had a chance to say something, do something, stand up, fight, push back against what is a completely fascist government. I mean, there's just no
ifs, ands, or buts.
No reasonable debate about where we are with this at this point. Like, you decided that the move was to go to the White House. And, you know, I think it's not only a sign of her, like, terrible elite Democrat brain, but I think it's also a sign of the success of some of the tactics that Trump has used. You know,
right. That's a great point.
I covered, and you guys have probably followed some of this as well. Trump is in the midst of this fight with Janet Mills, who's the governor of Maine. There was some gathering at the White House of a bunch of governors, and Trump called her out because he doesn't like their policy with regard to trans girls in sports.
That's right. And she said, I'll see you in court, to his face.
She said that. Because he calls her out, and she says, I'll see you in court. And so after that, he launched a whole of government assault on the entire state of Maine.
That's right.
And I'm not just talking about like a Department of Education investigation, although there's that. Like, they're pulling her funding from the Department of Education. The HHS launched some sort of investigation. They pulled all these different like employment grants. For a while, the frickin' stooge who's in charge of Social Security pulled this program where if you are a parent and you have a baby in the hospital, you just like check a box and then you get your Social Security card for your baby. It comes in the mail. They pulled that program so that new parents of newborns would have to go to the Social Security offices, which barely even exist at this point, to file for Social Security. Same thing with the equivalent program for at funeral homes. Whole of government retribution. So if you're a governor, if you're a politician, you're looking at that and going like, maybe I better just, like, if as she's standing there and thinking about how the hell did I get into this situation? Do I say something? Do I leave? What do I do? That example that was made of Maine, and of course it's been made of media outlets and law firms, et cetera, universities, et cetera. She's thinking about that example, and she doesn't want her state to be massively punished by him, so she just cowers.
This is how weak these people are, though, because anybody who cares about this stuff, you turn that into a rallying cry. You flip it back on them. You tell the world, here's exactly what they're doing to us. Here's how authoritarian and fascist they are. The fact that they're doing this proves they're authoritarian and proves they're fascist. And we have to defeat them. We have to destroy them. There is no middle ground. These people are evil.
Yeah.
And she can't do it, which is why it's definitely going to be the case that the AOCs of the world and the Tim Walls of the world and the people who are going, I welcome your hatred, bitch. They're the ones who are going to be, in the running or leading to be the next candidate.
And it's what you have to do. And,
of course,
hopefully...
You can't negotiate with fascism. You can't negotiate with fascism. It's very obvious.
The only response is a solidarity and standing up to them.
Exactly.
And we've seen so little of that from any sort of elite cultural institution. Yep. So many of the universities met, so many of the law firms took deals, so many of the media outlets immediately folded and gave Trump their bribe. Right. It's just, to me, that's been almost the scariest part.
That's a great point.
Of this era, because it's not just what they're doing and what they're attempting to do, which is obviously extremely horrifying. It's also the fact that there have been so few large institutions that have been willing to stand up. Now, I think that could change because his political fortunes are falling off.
That's true. And on the law firms, there's already at least 100 law firms that all signed a letter.
Yeah.
That were like,
man, the universities, though, how pathetic are they?
Embarrassing. Because they're relying on federal money, and Trump just cuts off federal money.
But you know what? They're not.
Yeah, you're right. They're not. They have to take a haircut, but that should be fine.
But here's the thing. Like, there are many state public universities that are kind of they're in a more precarious position. If you're Harvard, if you're Columbia, you have billion-dollar endowments.
Yeah.
You can take the hit. Like, I know it sucks, but you can take the $400 million hit. You can take that hit. But not only they're afraid, and then also their donors in a lot of ways agree with Trump on the let's screw over the pro-Palestine students, et cetera.
Yeah. That's right. All right, let's move on to the next one here.
Yeah.
So you actually had this guy on the show, Derek Thompson, and you debated him over his abundance agenda.
Yeah.
And so he went on CNBC the other day, and he had a good showing where he basically mocked the host for defending Trump's tariff insanity. But now he's getting a bunch of smoke online because he went on CNN, and he basically made an argument for oligarchy. So let's watch, and then we'll react.
Tonight, we're going to hear from Senator Bernie Sanders in a CNN town hall. He's been drawing huge crowds around the country in his Fighting Oligarchy tour. He is from a very different wing of the party than you. What is it that you would like to hear tonight?
Look, Bernie Sanders has a message, and he's had a message for many decades, and it's a strong message, and it resonates with a lot of people. I'll tell you the irony right here. Bernie Sanders talks about the oligarchy. He talks about the fact that we have a capital class in this country that's strong and controls all the strings. Well, guess what America kind of needs right now? We need the oligarchy to stand up. We need the oligarchy to say, Donald Trump, this plan makes absolutely no sense. You say you want to reindustrialize America? This is the worst possible way to go around it. Instead, what you have is a lot of corporate executives who are terrified of the president, just like you have white shoe law firms that are terrified of the president, just like you have university presidents who are terrified of the president. In a very strange way, what we need right now is for the adults in the room, in the economy, some of whom represent the very class that Bernie Sanders calls the oligarchy, they need to stand up and say this policy makes no sense and you got to cut it out. Because if what we really want here is growth, if what we really want is manufacturing to come back to America in a stable and durable and sustained way, you cannot be announcing random tariff plans every 12 hours and expecting people to slurp back $100 billion of manufacturing expansion in this country. It just doesn't make any sense.
The oligarchs are not the adults in the room. They are the most corrupt people in the room. They are the greediest people in the room. They are the most self-serving people in the room. They are the ones who rigged the system to screw over working class people. Mm-hmm. They are the reason manufacturing left this country in the fucking first place.
Correct.
So what these guys miss is they're dead wrong about the core of the problem. They think zoning reform will fix everything. What? No, the problem in this country is the corruption. The problem in this country is the oligarchy. The problem in this country is the severe income and wealth inequality. The problem in this country is that we don't have Medicare for all. We don't have free college. We don't have the PRO Act. We don't have a living wage. We don't have paid time off by law. Like, they really miss the core of why we're in this mess.
Yeah.
The oligarchs got Trump in that White House. They got Trump in the White House. It was Elon Musk who gave $270 million to get Trump in there.
Yeah.
To any, like, oh, you got to hand it to them. They would be the adults in the room. No, they are not the adults in the room. They are not the solution. They're the problem. You don't got to hand it to ISIS in the same way you don't got to hand it to the oligarchy.
Right.
And that's my issue with these abundance people is that, like, they really seem, it's all small potatoes. It's like, oh, if we just do YIMBY zoning reforms, everything will be fixed. It's like, what fucking planet are you living on?
Yeah.
How does that address in any way, shape, or form money and politics?
That's
How
right.
does it address the massive income and wealth inequality?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And especially at a time when, I mean, Elon Musk is like destroyed. The best parts of our government is trying to, I mean, it seems pretty clear. His push is like to privatize Social Security. He's gutting it so that it can't function. You know, he wants to get rid of the whole government. And, you know, any of your like zoning reform, it doesn't matter. In the face of it, will make no difference in the face of that. You know, there's so much to unpack in his commentary because in a sense, like, the people who currently have power in the country are the oligarchs.
That's right. And he pretends like it's not.
And so if you are, and actually they are the ones who pulled Trump back from this tariff regime, like in a sense, with like the market reaction and the, you know, billionaires like Bill Ackman and Jamie Dimon's CNBC appearance or whatever apparently was influential to Trump. But the fact that those people are the ones that have the power, that is a core problem in this country because typically, this was a very unusual circumstance where the interests of the oligarchs were in some way aligned with the interests of working class people who are about to be completely screwed by massive price hikes. And by the way, are still likely completely screwed by a pending recession. It is very rarely the case when those interests align. It just happens that Trump's policy was so incredibly fucked that it was literally bad for everyone.
Yeah.
But typically, when oligarchs are pushing for their interests, they are directly at odds with the interests of working class people. So yeah, the core problem you have in this country, it's oligarchy, it's inequality. It's the fact that the interests of the few count for everything and the interests of the many count for absolutely nothing. And yes, that is how we get Trump in the first place. So when I talked to Derek, I asked him, one of the things I asked him is like, you know, part of the political problem for Democrats is they didn't really have a story of what has gone wrong because people feel like things have gone wrong. So what is your story of what has gone wrong? Who is the villain of your story? And he said, my villain is Trump. Well, that doesn't explain how we got Trump. Like, Trump didn't just come out of nowhere. There were problems in the country that people were reacting to. That's why they elected Trump in the first place. That's why they elected Trump in the second place. And so if you can't address and grapple with the underlying forces that led to this political moment, then no, you don't have answers that I'm not going to say there's nothing to what they're saying and there aren't good like regulatory reforms that we should incorporate into governance. In fact, Bernie talks about that, right? Was part of his program when he ran for president. But you are failing to really understand the core of what has gone sideways in this country, why it's so hard for ordinary people just to be able to have a stable, regular, middle-class life.
And Trump is an oligarch. He is a robber baron billionaire.
Correct.
So he's contradicting himself when he goes, the problem is Trump. But also, by the way, the oligarchs are the adults in the room. Trump is an oligarch, and he's surrounded by other oligarchs, right? So this idea, and capital always seems to side with the fascists over social democrats or socialists, right?
And
that's what, so in other words, it doesn't matter how long the timeline is, eventually with this guy's ideal system, the fascists take over. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because it's effectively let capital reign free, as if we live in a real meritocracy, as if these people actually are the best and the brightest and the most intelligent and the most hardworking.
Yeah.
And that's just none of that is true. None of that is true. So these people annoy me. They annoy me. I accept and respect that they're anti-Trump and are currently in a coalition to resist the shit that he's doing. Okay, I'll take it. But there will come a time when Democrats get back in power where that ideology has got to take a back seat.
It's neoliberalism. There's just nothing different. It's just neoliberalism rebranded. That's what it is.
Rebranded neoliberalism.
Yeah, it's like, okay, people are done with neoliberalism. How can we put a new shiny packaging on it? abundance. It's like, I mean, yeah, it's talk about the opposite also of like a grassroots push.
It's very top down, yeah.
It's think tank driven.
Right.
It's very urban driven. It's very California, New York centric. It's California centric in particular. And again, like I'm not saying there is nothing to their critique. Fine.
Yeah, build more houses. We're with you.
Good, let's do it. But also they want to rely on creating the right incentives where capital will do the things that we want to do. And it's like, you know what? Sometimes the fucking government just has to come in and build the houses.
Sometimes you got to tax these motherfuckers and spend it on the shit it needs to be spent on.
Exactly.
And people, I think the grassroots is getting that now, which is why you're seeing at these hands-off protests, you got liberal resistance wine moms wearing Luigi Mangione hats. Yeah. Right? And so they're losing their grip, and that's why they're sort of lashing out. But there's only digging the hole deeper by saying shit like this.
One more thing just on this point, and this is something that Ryan's been beating the drum on, is like Ezra had this viral clip with Jon Stewart where he's laying out like the rural broadband plan and it's all these steps and all this red tape you have to get through, and that's why we haven't had much of the rural broadband money deployed to actually provide services to the households we want to help.
And they blame Democrats for that.
And the idea there is that it's all these environmental groups or labor groups, all these like well-meaning liberals who are getting in the way. Well, if you actually talk, which Ryan and Emily did on Counterpoints, to the guy in the Biden administration who was charged with was overseeing that program, the reason all those steps were there was by and large because of internet service providers. It was because of
private corporations.
Because they didn't want to have the rural broadband project competing with their service.
That's right.
And so in an effort to make it bipartisan and get the Republicans on board, I'm not saying the Democrats don't take corporate donations as well, but it was largely Republicans and pushed by corporate interest that put all of those barriers in place. So even on your thing of like, we got to streamline and we got to make it so that we can build stuff and do stuff and deliver for people, you're ignoring one of the key reasons we have so much complexity, which oftentimes is corporate America.
And people also lie about that and say, there's been no internet that's been hooked up. Not a single person has gotten internet. That's not true. I researched this and millions of people got internet, including us. We got internet from this shit.
Yeah.
So for that, people just say things that are untrue. They just say, oh, nobody got internet. I see right-wingers say this, and these abundance idiots are teaming up with the right and saying this. And you're wrong. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. But they're using it as a proxy to shit on big, expansive government projects. And it's like, that's what in the moment where the world's richest robber baron is dismantling the government right in front of our eyes, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the CFPB, we need people to unabashedly make the pro-government argument that government can and should and will do good things for you, just like when your grandma gets her Social Security check. And instead, they're undermining what our movement is by saying, well, the oligarchs are kind of right about how inefficient government is. And it's like, sorry, on that one, you're just on the wrong team.
Yeah. And if you had a theoretical world where it was Bernie Sanders doing some based democratic socialist thing and the markets were tanking, I would not want the oligarchs to be able to come in and discipline and have their say. It's just like I said, in this instance, it is one of the rare times when the policy was so bad. It was literally bad for everybody, except if you're one of the billionaires who was there to insider trade and got the heads up about what the markets were going to do. It was such a catastrophe that it was bad for everybody from the top all the way down.
The irony is that if you actually implement a social democratic New Deal-like program, in the long run, it is good for the market.
Of course.
It's not even like you're trading off. No, when did we have, what was called the golden age of economic expansion in the U.S.? It was directly because of FDR and the New Deal and the public spending and the regulations on the big banks, which make sure they didn't get too big for their britches and didn't fucking over leverage and crash everything. So it's like a false dichotomy to act like, well, we can have the social democratic policies or we can have a booming market. It's like, no, actually, they fucking go together.
Yeah.
So anyway, we got to move on. We got a couple things left. So
okay.
Trump ordered 2 investigations via executive order of DHS officials from his first term.
Yeah.
So this is very, very, very disturbing. You referenced this before.
This is the thing Whitmer was in the office for, apparently.
Axios says Trump has revoked the security clearances belonging to former CISA leader Chris Krebs. CISA is the cybersecurity agency of the government, and ex-DHS official Miles Taylor, and ordered investigations into the work they did while in public service. So one of them wrote a very critical op-ed.
They were the
anonymous.
infamous, anonymous, were the resistance inside the Trump administration piece.
And then the other one said, Trump is wrong that the 2020 election was stolen. He lost the election. So understand, guys, That's it. The fact that one guy said Biden won 2020 and the other one wrote a critical op-ed. Trump is now signing an executive order telling the DOJ, I want you to investigate these people and ruin their lives. First of all, even signing an executive order to instruct your DOJ to do something, that's questionable in terms of legality.
It's not even questionable. I mean, I don't know about the legality, but in terms of the DOJ is supposed to be independent from the White House. So that precisely for this reason, so you don't just use the DOJ to sick them on your political opponents. Like, that has always been the idea. So him signing an executive order telling the DOJ, investigate my political opponents, and everyone's just like, that's what Trump does. Like, this is authoritarian to the max. Like,
to the max.
There is no other word to describe it.
These guys got to lawyer up. These guys got to, deal with an investigation and every, inch of their life being investigated closely. And for what? Because you told the truth?
Yeah, that's right.
Like, what the fuck are we talking about here?
That's exactly right.
It's so disturbing. It's so disturbing. It's so like the opposite of what we're supposed to be.
I know, and this is the thing too with this administration this time around is, I mean, there of course were news articles and some coverage, but there's so many. Meanwhile, he's causing this global economic meltdown. Like, you can barely even get to this extraordinarily authoritarian move that I think even in his first term, if he had done this, it would have been, oh my God, and front page news and wall-to-wall coverage.
And now we're the only ones talking about it.
And now it's like, well, yeah, that's one of 30,000 things that happened this week that were absolutely atrocious.
It's the Bannon strategy to flood the zone.
Yeah.
And it does drive me crazy because it does work, but like, it doesn't have to work. These news outlets could actually focus on all of them and scream about them. That's what I try to do on my show. That's what you try to do on your show. Like, at least fucking try.
Yeah.
At least try. And they don't seem like they're doing it. All right, one more. This is good news, actually. And you actually know more about this than I do. But 2 judges basically came out and blocked Trump's bid to deport people under the Alien Enemies Act.
Right.
It was 2 judges, back-to-back rulings. One of them was, I believe, in New York, and it was a Clinton-appointed judge.
That's right.
The other one is in Texas, and it's a Trump-appointed judge.
Yeah, that's right.
Ladies and gentlemen, a Trump-appointed judge said, now, I believe that ruling only applies to the people who are being held in Texas in particular.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Go ahead,
so let me give the context here. I got a download from Pisco this week, so I have decent understanding of all of the legal machinations. So the Supreme Court came in and handed Trump a victory on Alien Enemies Act this week, saying we're lifting the temporary restraining order, because previously there was a restraining order and you cannot use the Alien Enemies Act to deport until we figure out what the hell's going on. They lifted that order. Okay, you can move forward with this, but you have to provide, quote unquote, reasonable notice to migrants who are going to be deported under this authority. And there was no ruling on like the merits of whether it was a proper invocation or whether the people they already disappeared into this gulag, whether that had been, I mean, in a sense, it was a direct rebuke of that. It was an indication that what they did there was in fact illegal because of course they gave them no reasonable notice, no due process whatsoever. But the other piece about the Supreme Court ruling is rather than these cases being handled as a class where everybody is sort of challenging what's going on here, it has to be done on an individual by individual basis. So if you get that notice that you're going to be deported, you can file a habeas petition in the jurisdiction where you're being held. And you know, there's tons of insane logistical difficulties with that. First of all, you're leaving it up to this administration to determine what is quote unquote reasonable notice. Like Stephen Miller.
That part wasn't an order. It wasn't an order that they have to do the reasonable time thing. It was just a comment
Stephen
of the
Miller's
court.
going to be like, okay, I think 10 seconds is reasonable notice, right?
That's right.
And the other part is most of these migrants are being held in Texas or Louisiana precisely because those districts are more favorable to Trump and they're packed with a bunch of conservative Trump-appointed justices, and the circuit court there is also very conservative. So it's judge shopping, effectively. So the fact that you have a New York judge who came in and said, well, no, you cannot continue using this. I'm going to institute a temporary restraining order based on the habeas petitions of these 2 individuals who are in New York. And you have this Trump Texas judge who said effectively the same thing. We're issuing another temporary restraining order with regard to Texas until we, go through the process and figure out what's going on here. Both are very encouraging developments. So we'll see, because there's 2 pieces. Number one, are these people actual alien enemies, quote unquote, as defined in Trump's order? That means they have to be proven to be Tren de Aragua gang members. We know that 90%, this is according to Bloomberg, 90% of those that they already disappeared into the El Salvador prison had no criminal records. Okay, they were just sent, they had a tattoo that said mom and had a crown. So they were considered Tren de Aragua and they're disappeared and this to be tortured for life potentially. So number one is, are you actually part of this gang that this order is subject to? And number two, is it an actual lawful invocation of the Alien Enemies Act? Because it's you have to be at wartime. Like, we're not fucking at war, obviously. But they claim we've been invaded by Venezuela by their proxies, via their proxies in Tren de Aragua. So is that going to pass muster? So that's sort of where we are. But the fact that you have this Trump appointee in Texas who's making moves is very encouraging. Yeah, so they're going to rule on the merits. They're going to rule on the procedure. There's going to be a plethora of cases on these things. But with these judges saying this, basically, is it like insta-appealed by the government? I'm sure, yeah. By Trump, and then it goes up, and there's probably a stay on them making their decisions, which is part of the frustrating part is, like, they haven't even ruled yet on, like, can the court say you have to bring these people back? Right. Like, that's a separate case. That's right. And it's like, my issue with this is the fascists are moving at 1,000 miles an hour, and the courts, which are doing their job and doing things mostly correctly, it's so slow. Right. Well, with these people who they've already sent to this prison. Innocent people. Overwhelmingly innocent people. I would object to, I mean, it's just, I don't know what legal authority allows them to send them to this prison to begin with. But in any case, one of them, the administration admitted we fucked up here. But their position in court is, we're not going to do anything about it. Yeah, and they fired that guy. The one who said they fucked up, they fired. We're not going to do anything about it. And so that case is ongoing. So he's the one guy that's down there that has a shot at a court case, you know, is moving through the courts and being litigated, and he maybe there's a chance for him. You're saying Abrego? Yeah. Okay. What about the gay makeup artist? And this is the consequence of the Supreme Court decision, because when they said you have to sue, you have to use a habeas petition in your jurisdiction, what jurisdiction can they file suit in? These people who are now sentenced to indefinite torture in Bekele's dungeon. There is no jurisdiction where they can file. The Supreme Court left them with no recourse, none. I think their only prayer probably is just that they can survive the next 4 years until another administration is in there. I mean, they have left them with no legal avenue to pursue. Their family members and lawyers, there's no way to get in touch with them. So to your point about the move fast, that's already the consequence. These hundreds of innocent men who did nothing wrong other than having a tattoo of a crown in mom's name or the autism awareness tattoo or whatever. Some of them even were, going through the legal process for asylum, did nothing wrong. They are fucked. There is no recourse for them. And so it's just, it's horrifying beyond words. The last thing I'll say about it is you're talking about how the Democrats are still and the media is still kind of timid. No, I meant the courts. You're talking about before. Okay. Yeah. Where are the Democrats on this? On crazy, this issue in particular, I know they're scared of their own freaking shadow when it comes to immigration. People in this country do not support sending some innocent food delivery driver, some innocent gay makeup artist to be tortured and sold into slave labor for life. People don't support that. So don't be afraid. Get out there and make the case, because it is disgusting what has happened to these people. Even if it wasn't popular, I want you to stand on principle. This is a morality question here. It could be your ass in that prison. It could be any of us in that prison. That's exactly right. These are innocent fucking people who had no due process whatsoever. So it could be you. It could be me. It could literally be anyone that they just disappeared into this prison. And the cowardice, if you can't speak up on this, I just don't know what to say, because it is an absolute atrocity. It is a crime what has been done to these men. Even if they're brought out today, think of what they've already gone through. Think of what they have gone through. We got to bring our guest in, but let me just say, everybody who's responsible for getting these people sent to this slave labor dungeon, every one of them should be in prison. And Absolutely. The next Democratic president, I want prosecutors who have lists that are as long as the fucking Bible of all the crimes committed by Trump and Elon and Tom Homan and Stephen Miller and all of these fucking cretins, even the low-level DHS assholes who are doing the grunt work. Yep.
I want them all locked up.
Yep.
Because these are crimes and we can't let people get away with it, or you set a precedent that another president can do the same fucking thing.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Guys, we just did 2 awesome interviews with people running for Congress. Jackson Franklin is running for Congress in Indiana, and Kat Abu-Ghazaleh is running for Congress in Illinois. These are young up-and-comers. They're progressive. They want the Democratic Party to fight. They stand for all the right policies. Definitely check this out. Sign up on Substack below. You're not going to want to miss it.